folks, Darnell Mack here with Stamps by Kate. Say I'm working on a pattern that, or at least a stamp set that we've had out for a while. It's an old 1930s quilt pattern, and it was recently published in the Better Homes and Gardens, the All People Quilt thing, and our American Patchwork and Quilting, and it's a great block based on a hexagon and a diamond. Makes a beautiful star quilt. Get to play with colors, make it scrappy or more controlled palette, entirely up to you. This video is going to start in with the sewing piece of the main block to put this quilt together. It's a lot of fun to work on, either by machine or by hand, depending upon what size of diamonds and hexagons that you use. And so let's get started. We've assumed that you've already done the stamping part of it, but our stamps come out of the package. This one is the Celtic Skies. Kathleen's had this one probably since the 90s, I want to say. It's a bit before my quilting time. And this one is based on the pattern that was in the American Patchwork Quilting magazine. This is basically a 2 3/8 hexagon measured on the side. And in this package, it has the hexagon, diamond, a clear acrylic block. This is the protective paper on it. And yeah, and this is what the quilt looks like behind on the one that Kathleen did back in the 90s. It's purely relevant now. These were hand-dyed fabrics then. I've started one that right now is a king size, and this has got solids and grunge fabrics. I kind of did the same thing that Kathleen did with the navy blue in the background. So I'm going to make a bunch of these blocks. I'm going to post the pattern instructions for making the quilt like I did on my Facebook page, and it's a subgroup underneath there you'll have to request to join. It's the Stamp Stitchers with Kate. And so let's get started. The one I'm working on now, which is based on a bunch of scraps, is based on a 1-inch hexagon and a 1-inch diamond. But the process with these stamps are the same. Out of the package like these, this is the photopolymer stamp. It's a flimsy, and you need a handle. And that's that acrylic block. It's clear so that you can fussy cut. You just slop it onto the acrylic block and it adheres. When you're done, wash it, switch it out for the diamond, and you go on. So then you just stamp your fabric, stamp, 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 and either cut out by scissors or rotary cutters, entirely up to you, and you begin stitching. My process is to make my 6-pointed star first, and then I attach my hexagons. And so I make a whole bunch of these units because they're going to all interlock together. I want to show you first how to make this 6-pointed star. So this is my 2 3/8 inch block. The 2 3/8 inch hexagon, sorry about that. And that is measured along the side of the hexagon. And so this is a 2 3/8. This one is a 1-inch hexagon along that same side. To make this quilt, you can do it in any size diamond and triangle you prefer, and the process is the same. All right, so let's get started. I've already done the bottom half, and I do these in sets of 3s. So in this case, I've done the bottom half of it, and I've stitched from here to here, back stitch, running stitch, back stitch, back stitch. Now I flip the next one on, pin here and pin here, back stitch, running stitch, back stitch, back stitch. And that completes that half of the block. So let's do this one. I'm going to stitch from here to here and here to here. So let's get started. So I'm going to peel this one back. And I'll put my straight pin into my end point. Check on that side. I'm good. And I have my thread. Check the shinies on both sides, and you can see the straight pin and the needle. So I take that bite of fabric, pull my thread through, I take that's my first stitch, my first back stitch, and my second back stitch. Okay, now I'm going to pull that pretty tight. It is not coming out. Check it on either side. All right, so I can see my stitch here and over here. So I'm good to go. And now I just start doing my running stitch. Now I'm just going to stitch right over the dashed line. Now when I get to the straight pin, I'm going to stop on this side of the straight pin. If I go past, I'm in the seam allowance, and that's not good. Oh, always check on the back to see if everything's lining up and that you've been stitching on the back line. All right, I saw the shinies. I'm going to go ahead and take that straight pin out. And I'm going to take 2 back stitches on top of my last stitch. And that is what's going to get you that good sharp point when you're making these stars. So that's my first back stitch and my second back stitch. I'm not going to cut my thread here. Let's see what that looks like. Okay. So now I'm going to put this one right sides together, right on top of it. And I'm going to put my pin here and my pin here. Now I'm going to check the backs. Oh, there's my needle and thread on that side. So I'm just going to throw it around. I know that's the way the block needs to look. So my needle and thread is on this side, so I just turn it around. And my straight pin is here and here. Oh, I'm not liking the way that's lined up on this side, so I'm going to use my thumb and forefinger to scooch it down. And there you go. You can see the shinies of my straight pin here and on this side right here. Now I like that. Okay, let's check this one. Oof, I did the same thing there. All right. Take a bite of the fabric. See, you can see where it's at there and over here. If I go past that dashed line, then I would be into the seam allowance. Now, I'm going to pull this part over here away and out of the way. And I can feel that it's not in there with my thumb and my forefinger. That's my first back stitch. And my second back stitch. Now I just keep on going. Take a moment, check it, and I'm right on top of that dashed line. That's good. And I keep on stitching. Whenever I stop, I just kind of take a little back stitch right there, makes it a little extra secure. And I stop before the straight pin. One last check. First back stitch and my second back stitch. All right, you notice I didn't cut my thread when I've done this because I can sew these 3 pieces together with just 3 seam lines. All right, so I'm going to push these all to one side so you can see what that looks like. So see, now I've got my 6 points coming together. So now let's put them together. Right sides together. I'm going to put my first straight pin at the very end. I go from right to left because I'm right-handed. In this case, I'm going to put a straight pin over here. Now let's check. Okay, I'm fine there, not so fine over here. Okay, I'm good. All right. My seam allowances are here and here. That's not going to work. I need to move my seam allowances to this side. Pinning is your best friend in this part. All right, so then you just use your thumb and forefinger and scooch the seam allowances out of the way and stab your needle through there. Okay, you can see how I'm lining up with the point over here, and I can see my stitch lines here. You definitely want to check that. And then over here, you can see the stitch line there, and I'm not past it either, so I think I'm good. So I'm gonna take a bite out of my fabric. Well, I need a bigger bite than that because I can't see my straight pin. Ah, now I can see it. See it right in there? And I'm lined up on this side. So I'm ready to start stitching now. Take a bite of the fabric, double check. If it's not right, scooch it around. Okay, now I'm good. My first stitch, my first back stitch. Oops. All right, I'm not comfortable with that, so let's do it again. First back stitch. Oh, that was first stitch. Now first back stitch. Now second back stitch. Now it's not coming out. Now I just keep on going with my running stitch, stitching on the line. And I go up to, but not past that straight pin. And check it on the other side. Oh, I'm not liking the way that's lining up there. So I'm going to take a little bit out of my needle. Now I'm going to go ahead and take a little back stitch there. Oh, look what I did. I grabbed the seam allowance. Ah, no, there it is. It was just in my way. Otherwise, I would be getting my handy dandy seam ripper out. Okay. Still not liking that. That means I need to repin. Okay, that's better now. And I go on this side of the straight pin, and you can see it's much better lined up over here. So now I'm more close to that point where I need to be. I'm going to go ahead and take that last straight pin out. And I'm going to go right over that last stitch. And that's my second back stitch. I want that to be tight. Okay, I'm good. Now, my needle and thread is on this side of the seam allowance, and I need to start stitching from this side. So I'm gonna shove my needle through or travel through the seam allowance on this side. I've knotted my thread on the other side, so I'm all good. Now let's push those seam allowances the other direction. I pull this pretty hard to make sure I don't have any of those seam allowances in the other side. And let's take a bite of the fabric and see what that looks like. Ooh, nice. All right, I can handle that. See how it's lined up right there and right here. So that's my first stitch. I'm not cutting my thread. My first back stitch. And my second back stitch. Now let's make sure it's knotted. Okay, it's good. When that happens, if it's knotted a bit, that point is not going to stay fixed, and it may kind of move around a bit, and your points may not match up if you're not keeping that nice and tight. I stopped before the straight pin over here, and that's my last first stitch. And I do a back stitch right on top of that. And there you go. You can see the stitches on that side and on this side. And I'm right on top of that line. Now I can cut my thread. Let's see what it looks like. All right, this is the part that I like. you get all your seam allowances going in the same direction. In this case, I'm going counterclockwise. Now, take that center and just thumb press it open. And look, it's all nicely lined up right there. And see, this is what it looks like from the back. Now, if you want to, give it a quick press with all those seam allowances going in the right direction. And let's see what it looks like. I don't know if my iron was hot enough, but we'll see. Oh yeah, good enough. See? Gives you that little rosette on the back. You can see I've used both, I've used white ink for these dark colors. And look, the points match up. Now, trick, if that's not rotating and matching up for you, all is not lost. Change the direction of your seam allowances. I don't know why it works, but it kind of changes the rotation and moves the fabric around, and chances are it's going to line up much better this direction. Okay, now for the last step, to add our little hexagons. So when we're doing our hexagons at this step, I'm going to do right sides together and stitch from here to here, and then I'm going to pivot my fabric and go from here to here. So let's look at it on the table. So, and I want my, whatever this print is, to kind of go opposite directions and stuff. I'm not wanting to keep everything in alignment. I want it to be a bit scrappy. So I'm going to stitch from here to here, then backstitch, pivot, and then go from here to here, backstitch, running stitch, backstitch. Then I'm not going to cut my thread. I'm going to add this one, backstitch, running stitch, and backstitch again, and then pivot this one and go from here to here. And I'm going to end up, okay folks, I hit the wrong button. So this is the part 2 of this one. I've made my star. And now I'm ready to put my hexagons on. The hexagons, I'm going to stitch from here to here, pivot here to here, and I'm not going to cut my thread, and then I'm going to stitch from here to here to here. All right, let's do this. Right sides together. All right, that should be a little closer, I think. Let's try that again. Okay, that's good. All right, take a bite of my fabric. Let's check on either sides. Okay, I'm good with that. All right, my first stitch, my first back stitch, my second back stitch, give it a tug, and it's tight. And I stop before that straight pin. Check the shinies on the back. Okay, I'm good. And I'm going to go in for another back stitch, take a bite of fabric. Okay, I'm good on that side. And my second back stitch. All right, now I'm going to pivot my fabric. I'm going to pull this out of the way, and I'm going to give it a really good tug. Not too hard, because I don't want to distort my bias edges here. But enough so that you don't feel any of the seam allowance in here, and you can see that right there that it's not in there. Okay. So my needle and thread is on the right side of the fabric here for me to start stitching. Take a bite and check. Check the shinies on the back side, my needle and my end point. Okay, that's my first stitch, my first back stitch, my second back stitch. You definitely want to do that on both sides so that you secure the point. It's not so much of making sure the fabric's not going to pull apart as it is to make that point. I don't go past the straight pin. First stitch, back stitch and second back stitch. Now give it a tug, make sure it's not going to come through. There's my first one. Notice I have not cut my thread. There's no need to. Thumb press those seam allowances out of the way. And I'm going to get my next hexagon. Right sides together. I'm going to put my pin here. And now I'm going to, okay, my needle and thread is on this side. I'm going to travel through the seam allowance onto this side. Take a bite of fabric. I could be closer. So I'm going to pull that out a bit and take a bite of the fabric. There, perfect. I like that. Blind squirrel got a nut. And my second back stitch, and now I continue with the running stitch. Now I'm about to play chicken with my thread. Of course I am. So I have one threaded up, so I'm just gonna knot my thread here at the end, make sure it's nice and tight. I have another needle threaded up, and I'm just gonna go a few stitches on the other side of that where I knotted it and start over again. I try to do it in the middle of these straight seams because I have more control and I don't want it to pop in those points. So now I'm doing my running stitch and I'll stop right before that straight pin, check it on this side, and so you can see my straight pin here, and there's my needle and thread over here. So I'm not in my seam allowance. All right, that's my last stitch here. Yeah. Take my pin out, but I'm still going to check. Okay, I'm still good. First back stitch, second back stitch. Now I'm tugging the thread. It's not doing little gathers, so I know I'm good. Now I pivot this last one along this side. Now I've done this before and messed up on where I'm putting my hexagons and stuff. Open it up and make sure it's kind of laying out the way that you want. And now I'm going to pull this away, and I'm checking my thumb and forefinger to make sure I don't feel a seam allowance. All right, my needle and thread is right here on top. Take a bite of fabric. Okay. I'm not past this line of thread going here, and I'm on the dashed line there, so I think I'm good. Okay, just as a check, that's my first back stitch and my second back stitch. Now I do my running stitch. I stop before that last pin, push my needle through, maybe, and I do my first back stitch and my second back stitch. And I'm good. It's right there on top of that dashed line. I'm good. All right. I'm going to take one extra back stitch for grins and giggles. Now I can cut my thread. Now the same thing is true on this side. Notice I've got all of my seam allowances going that direction, and now I'm just going to kind of continue that on this side. Give it a thumb press, and well, sometimes it works out on the back and sometimes it doesn't. And in this case, it's not. So I'm just going to make it all go the direction I want it to. And so I can minimize how many seams are right here in these points. And then give it a quick press. There we go. And that's all there is to it. So you'll end up making a bunch of these blocks to make the Celtic Skies, and you just make them in rows. And so when you're ready for the next one, you take this, the bottom, your next star, and just go from here to here, here to here, here to here. And you just start making these things. I'll do another one as well. I'm making the rows so that you get a feel for it. If you follow me on Facebook, I will have a PDF of a pattern that I've put it together. Now that we've got this, it's been out for a year and a lot of people don't have the magazine. So I've put some instructions together of how to do it with Stamps by Kate, and it will show you how the rows go together. So you can see here's the block up here that we were making. And I don't know where my last page is. I got to find that. But it'll be out there if y'all are interested, or send me a message. And I hope you enjoy this. I've had a blast doing this quilt. I've made one that is a king size for my son that is made with this 2 3/8 inch hexagon. And I'm doing a scrappy one sort of out of this 1 inch hexagon, and using the stars, making some tumbling blocks, just kind of a scrappy thing. A lot of fun. This one's my handwork project. This one's my sewing machine project. Enjoy this. If you have any questions, post or message me or send me an email, or anything else like that. Folks, enjoy this pattern. Have a great day. Bye.